On today's show, let's talk about the Cavs' biggest needs. We all know what they are, but let's dive into them.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
You heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. This episode, as always, is produced by the one and only, the God himself, Jake Stevens. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. It's the Locked On Cavs podcast, your team every day. Segment 1 today, perimeter shooting and shooting in general. Segment 2, on-ball defense and bigger wings. Those are two big Cavs needs. And segment 3, the value of projects. The Cavs are going to be in a position for a variety of reasons, as are a lot of other teams, to go after projects, guys they're going to need to develop. So we're going to talk about the importance of them. Evan, I want to give you some stats first. Are you ready? All right. Here's the 3-point percentage for Cavs rotation players last year. Oh, boy. This is not factoring in Danny Green, Dylan Windler, etc. So keep that in mind. They do not count for this exercise. Darius Garland, 41% on 8.4 attempts per game. Pretty good. He's pretty good. Karis LeVert, 39.2%. Donovan Mitchell, 38.6%. Jetty Osmond, 37.2%. Isaac Okoro, 36.3%. Dean Wade, 35.3%. Obviously, know that fell off later on. Kevin Love, also 35.4%. Lamar Stevens, 31.6%. Evan Mobley, 21.6%. Jared Allen, a whopping 10%.
Oh, boy.
So
shouts to Jared Allen for making the list.
For just, rotation guy, so he gets on there. But here's
okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
I was being persnickety. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's you. I come away looking at this and thinking it is funny how, despite the fact that there are some legitimately good percentages on this list in terms of your role guys, in terms of LeVert, even Okoro, even Wade, even with the fall off factored in there, it really still feels like the Cavs are just like devoid of any shooters teams actually respect, which doesn't match the numbers, but in reality that's how it feels.
Yeah, it's interesting when you break down the statistical output when it comes to just the shooting percentages or just players that are or are not shooters for the Cavs. And it certainly passes the individual analytical test. Like you're looking at like Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell just as your two headliners, or even Karis LeVert, who we noted this when we were kind of reviewing LeVert's season. He had like an abnormally great year from 3-point range, especially just because he really cut down on his midi attempts and focused on just being like an efficient, more so malleable player for Cleveland. But like when you look at the eye test aspect of it, it just becomes a very tough pill to swallow, because Cleveland likes to play a somewhat antiquated style of basketball with 2 7-footers in their starting lineup. As you'd share shooting wise, neither of them are like lethal threats from the perimeter, especially Jared Allen either way. But you need to supplant that and support that, because sure, Karis LeVert was second on that list, but like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are entrenched as your starters in the backcourt, and they're at the top of the list naturally. But you need more support around those two so that they're just not the primary focus on the perimeter, or Karis LeVert if he happens to get a hot streak that night. And I keep like just hammering this home, and you and I have been hammering this home for almost 2 months now, since it's been that long since Cleveland's season ended. That the Cavs just need shooting in the worst way to support this core 4 that they put together. And if you want to say 5 viable role players, including Karis LeVert, and it's a tricky situation. Every team needs 3-point shooting across the NBA, but the Cavs are no exception to this. And this is a Cavs Central podcast. So the fact that Cleveland just like, in terms of just how the numbers play out, like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, they weren't a terrible 3-point shooting team. I think like the biggest takeaway from them getting Donovan Mitchell is like their 3-point numbers are going to go up naturally by adding him. but they need to kind of find a way to flesh it out where they can continue to play that antiquated style of play, but add a touch of modernity to it. So it's just a little bit more of conducive, comprehensive, complementary offensive basketball to go hand in hand with how good you are defensively.
I think part of this, for me, in terms of how we view this, does come a little bit from 3-point rate. The Cavs as a team are not one of these teams that are designing. They're not like the Celtics, for instance, that really generate most of their threes, and like that's most of their offense. In terms of 3-point rate, last year the Cavs were 16th. So not like, the league average is 35.5% of shots from three. The Cavs were 33.8. Other teams in that range include Memphis, Detroit, Phoenix, Minnesota, and Philly. So they're all they're in that range. The teams at the top would be Golden State at 44.7, Boston at 44.5, Dallas at 44.2, Milwaukee at 41, Utah at 39. This is a situation where I think to me, it feels like some of this is just a volume question. I'm not saying they're going to get into the top 10 or be like, at 40% of their shots from three. I think that would be a really drastic change unless you swap out a Jared Allen or something. But I think if you find wings, like kind of funnily in the Jetty mold, but just like I think more consistent and better defensively than Jetty, and some of the volume goes up, or you can get Okoro to turn that lever and just let him fly every time if he's on the roster, or even, I think LeVert's kind of stretched to his max there. I think that's where some of the solution might come from. And if I'm looking at guys in this draft on Thursday, if they take someone in the second round or trade up for a first round pick or whatever, I think you would be looking for guys who are comfortable letting them fly when contested, and guys that are willing to just let it rip sometimes. That feels like what it's missing from this room.
Need a couple Beybladers on the perimeter just to let it rip, as you said. And I chuckled at the idea of Jetty Osman, but like has defensive consistency, or maybe just not as a liability. But I'm like, yeah, that's like the mold of what every team needs. And if you look at the free agency market, or even guys like the Cavs could acquire in the draft or via trade, like I look at like a cheaper option, maybe Troy Brown Jr. is a guy who is too expensive for Los Angeles and the Lakers, and the Cavs are maybe able to acquire him just because, at least on paper, he is a bigger wing who provides you perimeter defense just because of his size and some of his athletic ability. And at least he provides you that spot up and maybe sometimes movement shooting as well. But it does make you think, because I agree that Karis LeVert is probably stretched thin on what the Cavs can get from him in terms of 3-point shooting. I also wonder, do we get the same Karis LeVert heading into next season, assuming, of course, that he signs an extension with Cleveland of some type, and that like you get the same like second half of the season Karis LeVert heading into next year and for at least the remainder of his contract and time with Cleveland, because like there's an idea, maybe a glimmer there of a player that fits what the Cavs need just in terms of just from wing production, but they certainly need more of it. Isaac Okoro, I just don't see being a guy that rips it from 3-point range and keeps defenses honest unless he makes like a dramatic leap this summer heading into next year. And we're pressed for time, obviously, but I maybe we put a pin in this, but like, is this why you kind of changed your stance the other day from Evan Mobley going from team handle to team 3-point shot? Because if Mobley becomes a shooter, this unlocks a lot for Cleveland offensively.
It's part of it. It's part of that calculus for me, because I think you need shooting at as many spots as possible. And again, I don't even think it has to be 3-point shooting. Like, I think if Mobley hits 18-footers or hits pull-ups from the mid-range, like I think that will offer more room for everyone else to work, because you'll have one less guy backed into the paint. You need 3-point shooting. You absolutely do. You need teams to fear the guys you have and willing to contest them. That's part of this, but it's absolutely why you need. We're in an era in the NBA where like the shooting stuff does really dictate a lot of what's going on, and that's part of it. All right, after the break, let's talk about big wings, talk about perimeter defense. Dive in. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It is so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. But when we spend all of our time on giving, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burned out. Therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. And therapy is a great way to work on this. I have been going to therapy for a long time. I go every other week. It has made me a better person, a more patient person, allowed me to process things in my life and things that are happening that were hard to get through. It's been a really useful thing for me. And if you're thinking about starting therapy yourself, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Everydayers, Evan will be back tomorrow with NBA draft expert Leif Thulin. He's one of the hosts of NBA Big Board. And I dare I say you should go check out that show next if you want a great second listen today. And check out Rafael Barlow's Substack. He does a ton of great stuff over there. It is worth the price of a subscription if you want to go support Rafael, who's blowing up this draft season. Really happy for my guy. All right, wing defense, Evan. This is obviously just... I think particularly in a world where we saw how the playoffs went and you're playing with Mitchell and Garland, I think you just need wings who can absorb some of what is going to get thrown at those guys. And I think you need a couple of them. LeVert, quite isn't that. Okoro is that, but the offensive liability is there. Jetty's not that. I think they need just other options to kind of be the bigger wing that they can use to kind of to manage them. Some of this, Evan Mobley can grow into some of this, but I think wings that can really would really help them continuously here.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just that. I think it's also wings that are capable of, one, being low usage type players, like guys that are very comfortable with not having the ball in their hands, because that's just going to happen when you get an offense that runs through Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. But more than that, like guys that understand their spots, guys that are comfortable playing alongside Mitchell and Garland, and feed off the fact that like defenses are going to bend themselves to those two. And you saw it for a brief moment, or maybe better overall, just in game 2 against the Knicks. Like the Cavs did a great job of, okay, Donovan Mitchell's going to get a ton of defensive respect. Darius Garland's going to get a ton of open looks on the perimeter. And I think if you're Cleveland, having one, possibly two more of those guys, and assuming Karis LeVert is the third one in that mix, who can just benefit from those wide open looks and probably just cleaner looks on the perimeter and just, hurt defenses in that regard, is one, going to make life a lot easier. Two, just no matter what, scoring wise, if the Cavs are able to keep pace and maybe just impose their will on either end of the floor that way. But more importantly, like you said, Mobley, and as you touched in the last segment, could become more of a mid-range shooter, a guy who pulls up from 18 foot, maybe pulls up from the free throw line, just to kind of stretch out the defense a little bit. But it obviously doesn't have to be his bread and butter or the only thing in his arsenal offensively. So if you have those guys who play off what Mitchell and Garland are kind of seeing from defenses, it just makes life easier for Allen and Mobley down low, just so that you're not asking them to stretch the floor, or you're seeing Jared Allen practice 3-pointers or take them in game, or even Evan Mobley taking them in game, and he's kind of either gun shy or maybe just not fully comfortable taking shots like that. And it allows Mobley to grow and develop more into that type of player. But it just, again, it's an antiquated style of basketball they're playing. That touch of modern play is from 3-point shooting, and you need low usage guys that are comfortable with the ball in their hands.
I think this is also this is kind of some of the skill sets I think that stand out among the 20s and 30s, which is where the Cavs have been kind of rumored and reported to want to move up into. You can go through the various mock drafts and flip through some names that there are going to be wings and older wings at that available. And there's a lot of interesting names you could throw out. There's Ben Shepherd at Belmont, who would be at the 31 in the latest Ringer mock. I do think I would have some PTSD if I'm the Cavs at taking a Belmont wing who's a senior, but I maintain my stance that Chris Murray is the ideal guy for you, but I don't know.
Unless you're in the absolute early 20s, I don't know if he'll realistically be there.
Yeah, you could maybe get. He's at like 27 in the latest Ringer mock. Maybe he's in that range. I think like obviously like this stuff can be all over the place. Someone will fall. Maybe it's him because he's a little bit older. But if you can get into the second round, like you have someone like Julian Phillips from Tennessee, who's 6'7", 6'11" wingspan. You have to really develop his 3-point shot, but like so that is dicey. You have Keontae Johnson from Kansas State, who's a 6'4" with a 7-foot wingspan, 239 pounds, can really shoot it. Like that to me is like sign me up for the 6'4", just like jacked guy. Like that's like a Grizzlies type player. You have Julian Strawweather from Gonzaga, Hunter Tyson from Clemson. Jalen Wilson from Kansas. He is going to be not the primo Kansas wing in this draft. That's obviously Grady Dick, but this is 6'5", 6'8", with a 6'8" wingspan, 230 pounds, has to improve as a shooter. So like definitely again some concern there. That's why some of these guys are second round picks. But I think if they keep this pick or they even move up and that's the only pick or they have 2 picks, whatever it looks like, whatever this ends up looking like, Evan, I think there's going to be this kind of player that will be available to them in this rough range we kind of expect the Cavs ultimately to pick in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this does hinge. I know you can reset your calendars. The Cavs are linked along with other teams to possibly trading into the back end of the first round. There's a very realistic chance that it just doesn't materialize just because like the Bradley Beal trade does move a domino for sure, but there are teams that can make much more handsome offers comparatively what the Cavs can offer just in terms of the teams that maybe are looking to move their additional first round picks. But we'll see how it goes come Thursday night. But if the Cavs are able to grab a dude who can complement the wing rotation, be a bench player, whether he's like your 8th or 9th man, maybe even 7th, depending on how things shake out. But like Christian Braun is the example I think of just because it's recency bias and he's a rookie who played some meaningful minutes in the NBA finals, but like other than game 3, like he wasn't like super notable, but he gives.
But that's all you need. That's all you need. You need one game.
That's what I'm getting at. Like you need either one game or a guy who isn't a total liability and understands what his role and responsibilities are for 15 to 16 minutes come playoff time, so that you have more depth and you don't run into a similar issue like you did against the New York Knicks, where you have 4, possibly 5 viable players available to you in the postseason, and you're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks so that you can round out the rest of your rotation. You're not burning your guys into the ground. So it also just considering like how limited Cleveland is financially, like they have the mid-level exception. They have a couple other options too, vet mins, of course, but they have to be kind of creative. And if it requires them to sacrifice like a Jetty Osman or an Isaac Okoro or Lamar Stevens, if they guarantee his contract, which would be ice cold if they guaranteed like his club option on Thursday, then immediately traded him, or even like Dean Wade, like there's like options the Cavs can use within the margins, some future second round picks as well, just to kind of maybe make a more tangible upgrade now that bolsters that wing depth. And I don't think it lessens the pressure come free agency time, but like makes it a little bit easier to navigate, so you can get a little bit more creative with your options mid-level exception wise to just maybe address some of the other needs elsewhere on your roster,
or just honestly come away with 3 wings
into shooting. That's the true approach. It's modern basketball, baby. You just got to do that.
You need as many wings as you can possibly get. Like you need, even if they are like not perfect, you need as many hands on the stove. You need as many things cooking here, I think, to kind of figure out the swing rotation beyond just where it is now. Today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Grocery, school shopping, and getting a little something for yourself. You know you're already going to do it, so why not get cash back for it? You can do that with Ibotta. You can earn cash back on every shopping trip. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year in real cash back. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, or you could use your cash back to spend some money on that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're trying to get to, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Ibotta lets you get real cash back, not points. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta with the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use the code LOCKED. Let's talk about upside and risk here in the context of the draft, Evan. I'm going to use Emoni Bates as the context of this. This is someone who obviously was a very heralded recruit. Memphis didn't go well, played at Eastern Michigan last year. He's going to be, if he gets picked, a late second-round pick. He's worked, there's a photo he posted to his Instagram story on the 20th, hours before we recorded this, where he worked out for the Cavs. He's worked out for a bunch of other teams as well. This is what I would say. I am not necessarily a Bates guy. I'm not going to sit here and say this guy is your future star. You're going to turn him into a superstar the second round. That's not my point. I'm skeptical that he at 179 and with the wingspan isn't super long for his height. There are some things about him that I don't trust. But I think if it's the Cavs or it's any other team, and I think particularly with the CBA and the importance of the G League and how important the 3 two-way slots I think are going to be for the best teams, not just the rebuilding teams. I think if you're willing to do it, if you're willing to lean into some riskier things late in the second round where your hit rate's not going to be that high, I would not write that stuff off. I understand the skepticism. Again, I am not a Bates guy, but I would not write something like this off just because you don't think he's good. I think it is going to be the job of teams to take guys who were imperfect like this, guys with lesser profiles than this, right? You could Ricky Council the fourth is another really athletic guy who could be a late pick or a UDFA guy. You're going to have to turn those guys into stuff as you go forward.
Yeah, I'm pro Bates. If the Cavs can master Bates, it'd be a really interesting.
Oh wait,
bad, that wasn't intentional. Bad. I was actually being serious.
Tough. Continue.
Just get a handle on Emoni Bates. I'll just use my full name at this point.
There we go.
I could see the upside there. I talked to a couple scouts about him. Just he seems like a dude who could be similar to Pat Baldwin Jr., where the situation in college didn't work out, or Baldwin was a highly recruited or highly regarded recruit, ended up playing for the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee for his dad, didn't do anything noteworthy in the Horizon League, I believe was the division, or the league that that Milwaukee plays in. But either way, Baldwin was picked by Golden State late in the second round last year. He did some pretty interesting stuff, at least for the Santa Cruz Warriors. He could be a cheaper, cost-controlled depth option on the wing for Golden State. Now, it's not an apples-to-apples thing. Bates is not in the same player archetype as Baldwin, but it's a similar thought process where it's a highly regarded recruit, does not have much noteworthy in terms of what he provides or brings to the table as a prospect right now, just based on his college tape. But there's the physical attributes of it. He's a bigger wing who could play you that 3-4 spot, especially if he just kind of keeps growing into his God-given frame. What you do know about him collegiately is he does not hesitate to shoot the basketball. And I think if he's able to get hot, can build a lot of momentum off of that. And I think tuning into that and finding consistency is a key thing if you're the Cavs, or more so just the Charge, just developing this guy. And if you're Cleveland, you draft Isaiah Mobley last year in the second round. That's your only two-way guy that you drafted that you are hopefully developing into a rotation piece. You have Luke Travers, you have Klipa Vigiop overseas still. They're not coming over this year. Maybe they do next year or sometime down the line, or they never do. But either way, the Cavs more or less played it safe last year in the second round with 3 second-round picks available. With a guy just going on a 2-way deal and 2 dudes being international picks, just so the Cavs could maintain a little bit of financial flexibility heading into the summer. And hey, maybe they knew what they were doing because they were able to acquire Donovan Mitchell in the long run. But I think Cleveland can afford, especially just because it's the number 49 pick in the NBA draft. The success rate isn't super high, and I think you can willingly take a gamble on a guy like Bates because, one, he's going to spend the majority, if not the entirety of his rookie season with the Charge, and 2, the Cavs preach and preach and preach how important their culture is and the culture they've built is. And you get the vibe, at least, or the impression that they believe their culture is kind of too strong to fail at this point. And maybe they can take a risk on a guy like Bates, who does have those maturity concerns and just kind of some of the red flags, at least, that pop up when you're evaluating draft prospects. And maybe you're wondering, like, or at least trying to connect the dots on, okay, this guy was highly recruited coming out of high school. He laid out a stinker in Memphis, but like showed flashes of potential. Why did he go from a possible like first round prospect all the way to the back end of the second? Maybe if you're Cleveland, you're like, okay, he does have to do some growing up. Being in the G League may humble him a little bit, and he could be that guy. But like, I don't see him as like the bona fide permanent solution answer at the 3, but he gives you like that third, fourth option, at least. Not his rookie season, but his sophomore year, which again, it's much more cost control because he's probably going to be on a 2-way deal his first year. And then you continue to grow, develop, and then just throw the Kobe Altman special at him, and you just see what you have. And if it doesn't work, maybe there is another team who's interested in his upside. But there's a lot of interesting dudes that the Cavs could go with. Like, there's a lot of guys that kind of gone back and forth on, but Bates is a guy who I understand the intrigue, at least when it comes to him.
Yeah, look, I think the hit rate on any of these guys will be low, but I think the path here is get guys on 2-ways that even if it's a year from now or 2 years from now and it takes a little bit, I think you have to try. And even if they're not all going to work, you could go 1 for 3 on your 2-ways, and I would deem that a success. We're going to end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell. Evan's back tomorrow with Leaf Through Lean, talking all things NBA draft. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for his work on production. Stream the merrier wherever you listen to music.